Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crystal Core Radio Podcast. My name is Brian, and we got Chris and we got Mark here today to talk to you guys about a handful of topics. I want to get into the Square Enix sales figures. They recently announced some more losses and some losses within the stock because of the sales numbers. We're also going to talk a little bit about Xbox Play Anywhere, as Dragon Quest 3 2D HD, the remake, is actually Xbox Play Anywhere. And I think as we continue to see, more and more games are adopting that and less games adopting Game Pass. So I think we're seeing Xbox, especially with their new marketing shift. Like to get y'all's thoughts about that. We're going to talk a little about Star Citizen Squadron 42. If you guys don't know, they got a release window, and I'd like to get y'all's thoughts about that update. I'm excited. It's
Ashes of Creation is starting to look like it might be a real game.
Well, the funniest
thing
thing
exist.
The Ashes of Creation comes into that exact same subject because I haven't had the ability to play it. It's live on the weekends. And every time I'm like, maybe I've got a few minutes, it's DDoS attacked or something like that. So I'm like, I have so far for Ashes been able to make a character, nothing more. We're going to get to it. Also, finally, I would like to kind of get a heat map for you guys. What's your game of the year looking like so far? We're coming down to the end of the year. This is going to be an ongoing kind of subject, but what are you guys feeling and more? And if we end up having time, we'll do 20 questions. But Mark did also get a PS5 Pro, so feel free to ask him anything you want. Shout out to Purple Haze, who's a recent subscriber and first-time viewer of a live show. So welcome in, guys. If you are new around here, sound off. We like to highlight your various comments, discuss them on the podcast. If you do make a comment and we don't highlight it, just note that we're not ignoring you. But feel free to tag us, and we'll be able to, especially if you have questions, we'll go from there. Let's kick it over to Mark. You haven't been on the show for a little bit. You've been busy with work, as we were talking in the pre-show. Square Enix sales numbers. This is is any of this news surprising to you? The TLDR is Final Fantasy 16 maybe sold 280,000 units. Like, not what you would hope, not what you would want. Probably somewhere just around, the Dragon Age Veilguard sales numbers or whatnot. What do you think?
So that's total
on the PC.
On the PC so far,
not on PS5 sold 4 million units, right? Yeah, maybe more since they announced it. But PC launch, a lot of people were waiting. I think this highlights the cost of what it means to not launch simultaneously on PC.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's excitement that comes when a game's coming out, right? And you spend so much of your marketing budget to build that excitement. I remember when I was on vacation, not this summer, but the summer before, I was in Georgia watching something with family, and there was a commercial for Final Fantasy 16. It looked epic, right? And then once that excitement's gone, people have their opinions of it. There's very few folks who are going to be converted once it goes to PC. I agree. I think again, we always talk about, well, I've mentioned before, Final Fantasy 15 is their best-selling Final Fantasy game of all time. It launched on all consoles and platforms simultaneously.
And then it continued to launch because it took about a year for that game to really kind of and now we have all the content. Now we've fleshed out all the issues. I actually really enjoyed Final Fantasy 15. And the one thing I haven't played in it is I haven't finished the DLCs. And that's something where it's like, I just need to sit down and just pull the trigger and finish it.
Yeah, I played it all before the DLCs came out, so I beat that game and I had a lot of fun with it, and I was also unsure of what the heck happened. But I always say, like, Final Fantasy 15 just feels like, hey, you remember that movie book by Stephen King, Stand By Me? What if we made a game that kind of embodied that? A bunch of friends going on adventures, sitting by a campfire and getting into some real intense stuff, right? And again, that song's at the beginning of the game. So I really think that was their ethos with the design. And I had a lot of fun with it. But to your point, doesn't surprise me at all that the numbers are so low. And again, I just don't know what Square does internally, because they have some crazy expectations and crazy projections across the board, and they're always disappointed. And I just don't know how a finance team has such unrealistic expectations. Right?
I don't know if it's that they're unrealistic expectations. They've a former financial guy within the company said it breaks down to, you take the amount of money that you invested in the game. Let's say it was $100 million and it took you 5 years to make the game. And then you look at what the market did. And if the market was averaging, 10%, what would $100 million over 5 years at 10% net you? So that would essentially be like, okay, this is what we are looking to have in terms of like, did we beat the market? You know,
did we get an ROI, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's a
At some point we have to
reality
go
of
out.
gaming. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
But that's not how. Like, it's not like gaming is the quintessential market driver. So like if another sector does really well, if like tech does really well, that doesn't mean gaming has to do well. So like when you're looking at an entire market, there are individual sectors that do not measure up to the average. So that's just a weird thing.
Well, and that's what that means, though, that they say that it didn't live up to like they didn't meet the expectations, is that the game might have been profitable. They might have made, you know, hey, we made this game and we made $50 million from making this game. But if we didn't make this game and we just did this, on average, invested in literally the index fund, we would have ended up having $100 million. And so we did not meet our expectation in that gap. And that's how they reported that they're measuring, success.
Yeah,
a failure would be you didn't even make your money back.
Right. It's just a dumb way. So like that implies that last week when the stock market went on a tear and the 10-year treasury bond is on the rise, did you guys know that gaming is going to do better now because of this? Like gaming has to do better because the market took a bump. So like it's not that predictable. We talk about games missing the mark on picking a bad genre or picking a bad DEI or all these other things because they have to design a game for customers that are 5 years from now. And so they're trying to say, like, will pirates be the hot thing?
What's Maddie going to be into when she's 15? Yeah.
How far from Minecraft am I allowed to get? Like we all these guesses on where I should be 5 years from now. Meanwhile, I also have to guess, like, what is the index fund going to do? Like, why would I even get out of bed if all of that's a requirement? I'll just put it in Vanguard and stay in bed.
Yeah, I imagine, first off, pirates are always going to be in. That's my personal opinion.
The first quadruple A says otherwise.
Well, that was Skull and Bones was the worst game I've ever played. I'll just skip back to that. At a bare minimum, right? Like, how objective is your barometer internally? You have to look at a few things, like what's the cost of borrowing money, right? That's obviously going to impact what type of return you want to see. And what's the cost of sustaining a certain growth rate you want within your organization in proportion to the employees you have to maintain, research and development, and costs around the games. If you start attaching it to external market factors too, I do see that being a faulty thing if that's what's going on.
And are they borrowing with arms? Like, what are they borrowing with? Yeah. Like, I refinanced my home during the before times when we all decided to stay inside. And so my rate on my home is borrowed at like a third of the market rate right now.
Oh, sure.
And yet I don't then have to go look at the market rate and go, I should have put that money somewhere else. No, that is a set term sheet. So really the question is, did you outdo your term sheet? I have a buddy that invests in commercial real estate and he has a term sheet and it says, we will pay you this as long as the property does this well. And so he gets a guaranteed return and it's per annum. And so they take the amount of time it took to return him his money and they give him that rate. It doesn't go out and go, but the stock market did bad, so we don't owe you as much. But the stock market did good, so we owe you more. It's a term sheet that is independent of market drivers. And his desire to put money into that is he's betting that that's better than the market, but he could be wrong. Sure. They could pay him out per the term sheet, and then he could look and go, should have picked Vanguard.
Yeah.
But that's between him and that investment group, not an index fund.
Sure. Yeah. I wonder what operations really look like at some of these big developers, right? I mean, because we know a few companies that are very liquid, like Nintendo. Some of these other big companies too, I feel like it's a different story, especially if their business is comprised of things outside of gaming as well. Square Enix, not so much. Sony being an example. It's tough. I don't want to switch topics too, but it makes me think of companies like Alan Wake 2. I've heard that hasn't made its money back yet.
It's right? Alan Wake 2 is an interesting thing, and I don't want to like completely derail the show because this topic could easily derail the show.
Yeah,
but it's the articles written about that, the astroturfing that is just being inserted. It's like it tries to sell it as this positive. Developers announced that Alan Wake 2 has almost recouped most of its development cost. What? Like, yeah, we all knew it lost money. But what are we trying to do here? We're trying to spin this in some interesting way, like almost making up most of your development costs. Like that doesn't count advertising. Like just the wording and phrasing alone is just phenomenally just awful.
Yeah, and I think that's the barometer, right? Like on one side, Square doesn't want to be in that situation, right? And they also don't want to be in this unrealistic expectation. I think Chris is getting at too. So if they're making money on these games, I guess do you remember when they got rid of, was it the Hitman franchise and Eidos and all that? Like,
yeah,
I feel like the tone hasn't changed. I feel like, well, if we get rid of these things, we'll be more profitable. And they've kept doing that. And they've been focusing on their core IPs. And they're still in this situation where you're hearing the same thing of expectations not being.
But they've been doing these timed exclusives.
These expectations have to be, show me an incentive and I'll show you a behavior. Like that's what this has to be, because there's movies out there, like the Harry Potter movies didn't make money. They claim that they lost money. They brought in $900 million and they claim they lost money. How did they do that? They didn't. They just moved money around enough that they don't have to pay out all of these people who were told that they would be paid a percentage of profits. If we never make it to profits, there's no one to pay. And so there's all these actors over the years who have gotten points of profits. And then you have these movies that just make these untold sums at the box office. And they're like, oh, I wish I would show you. I'm not allowed to show you, but unfortunately we're short. Oh, how much do we make? You tell me and I'll tell you how much we're short. Like it's just totally made up. So with Square Enix, I don't know. Maybe they're incentivized to set these expectations ridiculously high.
Right. It counts as liability for them to mark off in other ways too, I think is what you're saying.
There's
like a write down, like a write off.
Yeah.
Like, hey, okay.
Yeah.
Shucks. Best selling game of all time just wasn't quite enough.
Good question.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
We looked at the install base of Windows OS and it didn't outsell that. So it's nothing you can do.
But I think that's the real story here, though, is that the reason why they haven't been living up to expectations is that they've been doing these exclusivity deals. And if anything else, like especially when you start seeing Dragon Quest III launch everywhere in Play Anywhere, I think we're seeing kind of an entire tectonic shift in terms of Xbox alone in this entire equation, where they're deprioritizing Game Pass. They've already, changed up the tiers so that even in the standard tier, you're not getting day and date games. Much that kind of mirrors what Sony already has available outside of the Ultimate. And then it says, then it shifts everything where we're seeing these games like Metaphor launch on Play Anywhere. And I've been buying those games. I'm like, Play Anywhere, gives me that freedom. And I think essentially what we're seeing here is because we've seen especially Dragon Quest III, and I think it was also the Visions of Mana. I was like, why am I drawing like launching on everywhere as well? That is going to be one of the biggest the biggest kind of shifts, and I think that's going to actually help lead Square Enix out of those articles. Because if you only ended up moving less than 300,000 units on PC, I would have ventured to bet, like I wish we could have AB universe testing, but I would venture to bet that you would see that it would have been easily over 1 million on PC and maybe a couple million on PlayStation, because you have that hype, you have that excitement, and then that hype and that excitement moves on. And I don't think you can recapture that because it's not a new game. There's going to be a lot of people who are like, I already know about this game. I've already watched a playthrough of it, or people. Yeah, it's old.
The PC release is probably less exciting to people than debating whether or not they're going to play Veilguard. Like why would you go back and talk about something that was already out?
Right.
So yeah, and again,
there's probably a game of the year from 2015 that none of us played and we would all love, but we're not going to. I don't know what game it is, but we just pull up a random year. You could just pull up game of the year contenders, and we probably missed a few. But you're not going to go back because there's a new game right around the corner, and there's a new game right around the corner. I don't know. I agree with you. The lack of a release everywhere was a mistake. And the question is, how much did Sony pay them?
Right.
Like, did they pay them enough that mistake is worth it?
You're like, all right.
So
I doubt it. I doubt it because of just that impact. Because especially when we're starting to see games on PC sell upwards of 10+ million units. like I doubt Wukong just
Sony's been telling them you're probably only going to sell like 300,000. We'll buy 300,000 copies.
buy three.
Leave it
Yeah,
off PC.
yeah, easy. Yeah, just a little bit. It's not. You're hedging your bets here, you know. So I think that does ring true, and it's unfortunate because of Final Fantasy 15 being one of the highest, most sold through games of all time. Hopefully, with Final Fantasy 16, this doesn't put Square Enix on the wrong path, where they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't make another Final Fantasy. No, please make another Final Fantasy.
Yeah, learn the wrong lessons, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
I see that happen a lot with people who look at data. They look like you're looking at the data upside down.
The problem with exclusivity was that we released the game at all.
Yeah, we would have made more money if we just put it in the S&P 500. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Square Enix is now a hedge fund. They are no longer making games.
They're BlackRock. Yeah, they're gonna just keep buying up property. I am curious. I'm looking online and I see someone said they spent about 59 million on the marketing budget alone for that game. They didn't market, at least I didn't see anything besides maybe some displays on the web whenever there was the PC version. But again, if you don't have that, it's not going to be in the public consciousness. And it's just plain and simple, basic marketing 101. Yeah. You're going to lose all that. I do wonder, how like Spider-Man 2 did on PC? Because I also wonder too if the IP plays a part as well. Where like there's just something more ubiquitous about Spider-Man where people might be more excited to finally get their hands on that game. And that's Final Fantasy 16 too. Like when you watch the videos from the developers, they wanted that game to be more palatable to people outside of the traditional RPG and action RPG space. And I feel like there's a rationale for that. But going back to how they look at the data, like I don't want them to say we should just drop this all together and never try to do anything like this again. Because I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And from that perspective, because like the other thing that I don't know we'll see a shift right now is that, we saw earlier in chat with Azer talking about how Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth is their game of the year. I'm sitting here still playing through Remake. Rebirth is not yet out on PC as well. So I'm wondering if we see that mid shift, but the general theory, because Remake and Rebirth aren't even on Xbox at all, is that maybe that there's some bigger deal that's kind of keeping that exclusivity for all of the Remake. So basically you won't see Remake and all that come to the Xbox until part 3 is out in the wild, and they can release all 3 at the same time or something like that. Yeah, I still think, with the exception of the Rebirth Remake series, that hopefully Square Enix we're going to see a whole new, forward movement with their games being in more places, especially with the PS 5 Pro out and 2026, the next Xbox is supposedly coming out. Like there's we're about to get into kind of a much tighter turnaround for that. But let's talk. We talked a little bit in the pre-show about kind of games as a service and how we're super busy. One of the games that I've been following since last year is Star Citizen, and I picked up and started playing the game. And it is, I think, an incredible experience, but obviously still an alpha build, still fan funded, been being worked on for a long time. But they
sound like an indie. Like, isn't it like $700 million?
800 million, I would assume, maybe more.
Okay, just some of it, still kind of getting its feet under it. It's just fan funded, a little
project,
Kickstarter project, little side thing
from Brian. It's
got a couple guys that want just a couple friends to play with them.
But the big announcement for them, because they have their annual Citizen Con, and so they get to highlight some of the tech and the features, and it's really impressive stuff. Like I can't not watch that stuff and be like, oh wow, like there's nothing of interest here. No, it's absolutely like, oh wow, like that's wild. Can't wait to see how that works, in the game and how it feels. But Squadron 42 is their kind of solution to a sandbox MMO and then telling a story, because it's set within the universe, but it's a single player, game that is not an MMO. So you can play through the story and you're not having to worry about balancing those things. They announced the release window of 2026 for Squadron 42, which really kind of timed out what a lot of people were like. I was spot on with that, because when they showed it off and they said it was feature complete, I said, if anything, it's going to be late 2025, but we will see. And so with 2026, I'm pretty confident that they're going to be able to hit that year. I'm excited. I think what they showed off, with the gameplay trailer is incredible. But again, it's also PC only. So I'm just generally curious because what would get you guys to buy Squadron 42 when it comes out? Like what would it need to do?
So we have $1 billion endowment to make a game, and they have instead said, instead of making the primary game, we are going to make a different game, and it's going to come out in 2 years.
I think their goal was to actually launch Squadron 42, and then it ballooned into like, okay, we're also going to make this an MMO.
It's the world's largest feature creep.
Yeah. Based off of the community who voted for it, though, because they asked their community, their backers, and their backers said, "Yeah, let's do it."
I think I would need significant head trauma to jump into that game, and that doesn't mean that it's not good or anything like that. I just look at my only experience besides you getting into and watching you is when I was on a consulting job back in like 2017. There was this one kid who was like the son of the consulting firm's the owner, and my buddy Chris, who Devour Games, was just like, yeah, he's really into Star Citizen. I was like, what's that? I was like, I don't know, man. It's like this thing you could buy ships. And he spent like thousands and thousands of dollars on ships, and it's not even a full game yet. And I was just like, oh, so that framed my perspective. I think someone said in chat it's a scam. I mean, you're getting something, right? I don't know if it's fair to say that.
No,
like, to me, a scam would be like, hey, if you give me this money, I'll turn it into this, and then they just rob you. But yeah, I think financially and just viewing time as a component of that, I don't have the time to even tempt myself with that. Partially out of concern of what if I enjoy it, and then you know what, I'm like, I just got a bonus. I'm just gonna buy this ship, or I'm gonna put money into it. Next thing you know, I have this commitment. So yeah, I think Final Fantasy 14 is a good enough goal for me to do whenever I have the time still. So
well, it's obviously infinitely more easily accessible than Star Citizen because it is Star Citizen's sandbox MMO. It is they're really trying to go with this sense of realism and immersion because and just like Dubs here, saying it's like, yeah, it's been a long development cycle, but they've had to invent the technology to actually make this doable. But one of the things that I would say is like if they ended up adding in this as a quality of life feature, when you're flying in and out of the hangar, I'm not the best pilot. And so I definitely am like scraping the ceiling and crashing from time to time. And
but you can do this in Elite Dangerous, which is fully featured.
I need to check out Elite Dangerous
now.
I need to check out Elite Dangerous. I think that's something I need to go try.
Crash your ship into the space station if you don't choose to equip auto docking. There's an advantage to not equipping auto docking because auto docking takes up a slot on the ship, so you can use that slot for other things if you're willing to do your own docking. But you do pay fines to the space station for the damage that you do as you come in and land. This isn't a game that already exists.
I'm going to check out Elite Dangerous.
Thousands of dollars.
None of that sounds fun. I don't want to pay fines in a video game for wrecking my ship.
I'm pro.
I'll tell you, if you put a VR headset on, it's pretty cool. The first time you land without, one of my brothers always auto docks. My other brother's like, no, you just get good at it.
Yeah, if they have a module that allows for auto docking in Star Citizen.
They do. Well, in Elite Dangerous, they have a module so people don't have to figure this out. You
I have to check it out,
and it brings you in and handles it.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
It's exciting because some of the space stations are spinning. You're like landing inside of like a big donut, and so it's spinning. So you're trying to like come in, and you don't want to take too long because it's moving.
Right.
So you gotta like.
I gotta check out Elite Dangerous now. Like I haven't ever played that one, and people said that there's some elements out of it.
How much of it, like these games, are like really appealing to people that want that simulator like experience?
That's what I think they're shooting for with Star Citizen.
I've never gotten motion sickness in a VR headset over all the years I've done it until I played Elite Dangerous and somebody shot my engines out.
Which is what you would
think would tumbling through. I went, whoa.
Yeah. Well,
I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And I looked down and saw, like the little bit of the crack in the glasses. I could look down and see like my legs, and I was good. But there was a moment there where if that had been firmly pressed to my face, I was not okay.
Interesting.
Just when they shot the engines out, I went tumbling rapidly.
I mean, that all sounds really impressive and cool. And I think objectively I could say, wow, but just knowing me, I don't think the simulator experience is something that appeals to me personally when it comes to gaming.
Without VR, it's a flight simulator. It's a
Okay.
dogfighting game slash like slight MMO. If you ever played like EVE Online, this like there's we're gonna go out and we're gonna mine for 2 hours and we're gonna go back, or we're gonna go out and hunt down some computer controlled pirate ships and come back.
What was that new Star Wars game that came out a few years back? That
Star Wars Squadrons?
Yeah, so that was a game.
Game Pass.
I think it is too. That was the game I was excited about because it had squadrons, and I was like, "Ooh, is this going to be like a Rogue Squadron game?" Not at all. And thankfully, like I will say, I don't think they marketed it that way. I think that was confusion on my end and a lot of people because Squadron was in it. But that was more of a simulator shooter too, right? Especially if you go full on with the VR as well. That was the closest I could get to that, Brian. Like I think I would need to be paid to play these games. That's my answer. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna be upset if that's where I'm at in life, right? But
yeah, I think that's also the other thing, because like I know Chris in the pre-show we were talking a little bit about Ashes of Creation, because Ashes of Creation is has this.
Oh, I've been watching a lot of the drama this week. It's been exciting.
The PvP drama, or is there different?
Yes. Well, PvP. So there was some Asmongold related drama.
Tell the story.
So Asmongold played the game, and it was Asmongold, and that's the whole story there. But for anybody that doesn't know, when a large creator plays a game, a lot of people are like, oh, this is my chance to be on TV and wave to mom. And this is a game that allows for PvP, and you can go into a starter zone and attack somebody. Now, in theory, there are penalties and things like this to stop you from attacking a stranger, but none of those penalties mean anything when the payoff is that you get to attack Asmongold. And so that can be utterly ignored. So now there's just a swarm of people harassing him as he tries to get the basics to the game. Then Steve Sharif, who says, no big deal. It's not hard to release a good game. You just have to not be a greedy dick and just be good. Not a big deal. He like pops into the game. He's like, hey guys, be cool if you stopped. Can't we all just be mature about this? Which is obviously how the internet works.
And then they killed Steve.
So it doesn't seem like they've quite figured that out. Meanwhile, Pirate Software, any of you that have YouTube shorts, he has hacked the hell out of that algorithm. So if you watch a single one of his with his ferrets or anything like that, he's about to be in your feed a lot. He says he releases YouTube shorts, and his goal with some of them is to stop your doom scrolling. He's like he tries to like be the thing that's going to make you go, oh, I've lost 2 hours. And so he he likes bug fixes in games. He's worked on QA in games and things like that. And so he was doing a bug report with his group, and somebody stream sniped him and attacked him while he was doing a bug report. That on his own said, he goes, you said you stream sniped me, so you saw I was putting in a bug. That's not really cool. We're going to come back and we're going to fight you. I believe his exact quote was, get all of the violence, guys. And so they went back and they got all their violence and they took it into a PvP. And that was going to be it. That's how PvP works. You killed me. My clan's going to kill you. That's it. Well, then this other guild decided, what would be really fun is if we now mass report him and try to get him banned. And he's like, so not cool. So now my guild is going to mark your guild as kill on sight forever. And we'll just kill you. As long as we see that guild tag, that's it. We will always attack you forever. And then they went out and made like Reddit posts and complained. And then Steve Sharif was like, carry on, Pirate Software. Like, good luck in your political drama. Like, this is what this is for. Like, he's not doing anything wrong. It's a PvP game.
Yeah.
Like,
it is cool.
Yeah, and those are the narratives that's an
Elon blind,
right? And those are the stories that form naturally, as opposed to a curated, experience that is PvE. And it's not going to be something that attracts a lot of people. Not every, like, we would bet, and easily, I think everybody here can agree that the PvE player base is much, much larger. Not even anywhere near close, but I would say the PvP player base is much, much louder, and they think they're much bigger than they are. But yeah, if you're not into that kind of thing, there's nothing wrong with it, but don't expect these games to continue. Like, I think that's where I get frustrated. If Steven and Ashes of Creation, and he makes his vision and it's sustainable and he's happy, and the players who are playing it are happy and who are backed it are happy, that's a win. That's something that's fine. That's awesome. But if it's like, okay, it didn't hit this monumental number and hold millions of players over a generation, if you have that expectation, I think you're going to be sorely mistaken because heck, when I haven't seen the video yet, but Asmund put out a video, I think, talking about his frustration with live service games. Yeah, that's what happens when you get older. It's like, it's almost guaranteed, you know, until you maybe hit retirement and all of a sudden you have like endless amounts of free time again.
His house is cleaner. His sink is white now.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was like happy to see him taking care of himself.
Yeah.
So, oh man,
Twitch should just ban people like on a set schedule. Like, yeah, you've been streaming a little bit.
I don't think people understand exactly how Twitch bans affect people financially. So I think just for a second, like it's just a brief education. Somebody that's been a full-time content creator. First of all, my understanding is that his ban was on Zakrar, not Asmongold.
Right.
So if that's true, there's a very different cost here for Asmongold as opposed to other bans, like some of the people who were raiding hummus and being intolerant towards other groups, and then they caught a ban. They were much more affected. So if there are 30 days in every month all year, and you have, let's say for easy math, you have 300 subscribers to your channel, and they subscribed pretty evenly throughout the month because you stream 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Then you have 10 little notifications popping up every day, and that's your subscriptions. They're set to renew, and as long as those people keep tuning in and they're down to support that creator, it will keep, it's going to keep updating. However, if a channel is banned or suspended on the day that it comes time for renew, it does not renew, and you have to come back and manually subscribe after the fact. So if they ban you for, let's say, 3 days, then 10% of your income the following month is likely gone, and you need to earn those people back. They need to come back and go, oh, I haven't subbed. Oh, that's weird. And then they have to, and you've now missed out on how many days of revenue that is from that person if they were going to say subscribed all year. So when you see these bans, a lot of people I see get frustrated at the length of these bans. They're so short, but that's because a 1 day ban is already 1/30 of their monthly money, and it can take months to recover that. So when you see a 10-day ban or a 30-day ban, a 30-day ban resets all subscriptions, all of them. So it doesn't need to be a ban longer than 30 days. It doesn't need to be 6 months, because at 30 days, you have already taken a self-employed person to zero. They start over. But Asmund wasn't affected by that as much because his primary channel wasn't banned.
And most of I think he hasn't been really using it primarily. Like he's been doing Zakrar. What would be an interesting, I'd like to get your thoughts on this to the panel here, is that you brought up something like an interesting story, like Asmund getting banned. I don't think, it might have a small financial impact, but he's set up to where he comes back, he's bigger. You know, like that's how it works. Yeah. But there is a class of streamer who that is devastating for, right? Like if you were got banned in that position, like that would have been catastrophic for that 10% or that 20%. Absolutely. So it's like in terms of that, like the ban and the punishment does not scale. At some point, it's a paid vacation that you get because when you come back to bigger numbers, more news coverage, people talking about you. You're more in the zeitgeist than ever before. I guess depending on what it is that you did.
You have to come back and earn it. You have to come back, and you have to come back hot. And that's why when they come back, they always make this big show of it. They make a big event because they're trying to gain more subscribers than they lost. And the longer that ban is, the more they have to gain. Right. So ideally, it's a self-imposed ban. Ideally, these whole I thought about it and I talked it over with Twitch and I'm going to take some time and it's not a ban. Those people crush because they maintain all their subscriptions and then they still get to do and they come back and so those people do really, really well. I don't know that should be a valid business strategy, but it appears to be one. Now the ones who get banned all the way off a platform, that's an entirely different animal. So when you talk about like people who all get all the way pushed off, I don't know how those people come back. And some of them do. I mean, this kid that wrecked his McLaren, we'll see.
I don't even know who that kid is, but every time I've seen him in something, like I saw a video of him almost getting punched by an old man, and I was like rooting for the old man. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, but he acts like a jerk. And at a certain point, I hope he finds out.
It's a whole genre. There's a whole genre of people that just want to be hated.
Every day we stray further from God. Isn't that a meme? I sometimes think that almost once a week. I mean, obviously it depends on what you do, but if you can come back, Chris, like you're saying, and you lean into what people like about you, like Asmongold and all that. But if you end up being like the next Ted Bundy, probably not going to work unless for, you know, you're talking about the small proportion of women out there who get really into serial killers while they're in prison. It's a thing. I don't know why it's a thing, but we know it's a thing.
It's something that I cannot relate to in any way, but I know is a thing, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, you're not a woman. You have, yeah.
Is it something that you think is a feminine trait to have that sense of like?
I don't know. Isn't that like I'm not even like, I have friends that like get obsessed with serial killers, but I feel like every documentary on Netflix out there is just about how these killers get tons of letters from women in prison, and like they have a thing for them.
I always think it's just like women survivability, you know, Survivor 101, where like I've known for a long time you're obsessed with true murder stories, because I think, at least from my outsider's perspective on it, is that women are listening to this to learn something about what happened, so that they don't find themselves in that situation. You know, it's like you're studying, you know, you're like, all right, you're watching game film and somebody else, the other team lost, and you're like, oh, I got to go out there in the world tomorrow. How am I going to be making sure I'm ready for all this?
My mom is so paranoid. Every time she visits, she's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, lock all the windows, lock all the doors. I'm like, Mom, we're going to leave the house. We're going to be back. She's like, lock them all. And then she spends most of her free time watching like Cold Case and all these shows. I'm like, why are you doing this to yourself?
I have to work from home today, and we went to lunch, and we did not leave the back door unlocked. We left the back door open. like the screen door is there. My dog can just let himself in and out. It was just open. Like we left and came back. It was just open. I don't worry about it. I don't know. I think I just don't think a lock stops people that much. There's this idea. It's like, I've taken this front door that statistically has glass in it. A lot of the houses, at least in my neighborhood, have glass in the front door. And I've turned this one little thing that lockpicking lawyer has told me is nothing. And there's windows on all 4 walls of my house. Like, if somebody wanted to get me, they would. Like, I don't know if that's supposed to make you feel better, but
all right, I got a story. I got a story that Julie shared with me the other day, and I think it's apt for what we're kind of talking about here. It is. I did not experience this firsthand, so I'm telling this as a third-hand story. But there was this girl, and she was about 6 years old, and she remembers distinctly that one day she heard a loud, like pan hitting the ground, and she walked into the living room to see her mom standing there and holding what she thought was spaghetti. And so she goes, "Hey, you gonna eat all that?" And her mom got so mad and yelled at her. And so for decades, like she's telling this as an adult, for decades, she was not ever she was a little bit nervous around spaghetti, because she really upset her mom that night with this spaghetti that was like spilled out over on the window and whatnot. And so eventually she said this out loud to somebody, and it caused her to think and evaluate, wait, why would mom be mad about spaghetti? And so she actually called up her mom to find out that it wasn't spaghetti. A guy was breaking into her house. Her mom shot the guy and killed him. And she walked in and said, you know that. Her mom was just like defending the house like a badass. And then her daughter, and of course she's like, I just killed somebody. Oh my goodness. Probably freaking out. And then you have like, yeah, my 6-year-old said that. I would have, in that moment, I'd probably lose it too. Oh my goodness.
Man, that is the thoughts that went through the mother's head. Like, also, there's an irony of something like badass about that. Like, hey, you gonna eat all that after doing that? Like this little kid just casually dropping that. Oh my gosh.
And the part that I skipped over that I don't know if it adds to the story or takes away from it is that she's like, yeah, I said that, and then I had to go talk to the police. And so the police came over and were talking to me about, they're having me draw pictures and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, my mom spilled spaghetti and I made a joke and she called the cops on me. So this woman thought for years. But yes, it was factually, I was not mom's spaghetti. Anyway, I heard that story, and I was like, when we were talking about that subject, I thought it was funny. All right, we got one more kind of general subject that I'd like to kind of get y'all's thoughts on before we wrap up today's show, and it's kind of game of the year watch. What's up?
Okay. We're not picking whether an old man or an idiot is going to win this evening.
Oh, Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. Let's take a brief aside. Let's talk about the Mike Tyson.
I will not be watching it.
You won't be watching it?
Possibly dump money into that. I will absolutely.
Isn't it on Netflix or something?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gambling on it, but I hope Mike Tyson murders somebody. That's kind of where I'm
Mike
at.
Tyson, he's got 30 years. Like I know he's been training.
Oh, I don't think he's going to win. Trust me. I think what Joe Rogan said.
He looks like a monster for a 58-year-old.
He does. And a 58-year-old today is not like a 58-year-old a couple decades ago either, with science and medication and the clear use of drugs.
Testosterone.
Yeah.
He's allowed to be on test, and I don't think it's a regular amount.
Yeah. No.
I don't think it's I think they've got him dialed to the nines.
His free testosterone might be about 3,000, if we're being honest.
We're trying to get you between 450 and 750.
Yeah.
What if we just dialed it to like 1,200?
Yeah, it's almost over 9,000. I trust Rogan's opinion on fights because he's an expert in that, and he said, like, listen, if Paul didn't become who he was because of all the content and stuff, and he was just a boxer, people would respect him more as a boxer and a fighter. And that's why he thinks it's not going to be as easy for Tyson to say. But yeah, I would not be upset if I saw murder tonight. I'm not happy about it, but there's a part of my heart and soul that is craving
You're
violence.
gonna eat all that.
That's all. Yeah,
you can eat all that.
Tyson says that.
So dark.
Well, because then you realize when she said that she spilled spaghetti, she's just not talking about the noodles, but the sauce as well. Like, yeah, you're gonna eat all that. It's gonna be interesting because, like, with
he was
this,
originally gonna wear headgear, right? Paul was gonna wear headgear originally, and they were changing the weight of the gloves. And then when they rescheduled the fight, they're like, no, none of that. This is gonna be real.
I think so.
A lot of money.
Have you seen the meme though? It's from Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and they have like Jake Paul as Mr. Glass or whatever, and then Mike Tyson as himself. It's like, we'll see, man. It's
Paul's
gonna be interesting.
Big, though.
Oh yeah, he's on testosterone as well.
Yeah. Combined free test 5,000. Like it's
such a wild story when you think about his trajectory from him and his brother and all the crazy stuff and all the money that they cost YouTube and YouTubers by doing their crazy antics to now where it's kind of evolved to where it's like, oh, he's fighting so and so, he's talking trash to this guy, and he's trying to like start stuff with this and actually do these fights, and he sells tickets, and a lot of people tried to follow in that business model and haven't been successful.
Clickbait on covering an MMO, and they put a video up with a thumbnail that had a dead person in it.
Yeah,
this is on the same platform.
That was the Japanese forest, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that I did hear about.
That kicked off the ad apocalypse. And that also skyrocketed Fortnite to wild successes. And so Ninja became a huge family name because of that, because YouTube made a small shift in the algorithm to deprioritize realistic, violent content. And it wasn't until years later that they made a subcategory where gaming violence, like with Call of Duty, was its own thing. And so you saw PUBG
just
fall.
Tanked.
It tanked from that. And Fortnite just skyrocketed because it was pushing that game out to all the kids, and that's one of the reasons. Like that's one of the.
Sweeney's not a Paul fan.
Interesting.
All right, well, I would love to see a round one knockout.
Yeah,
from who?
Tyson. I want to see Tyson just one single hit and down he goes. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but like something that can go in a YouTube short, something that the algorithm can't even ban fast enough, 60 seconds or less.
From this fight, though, I don't see how anybody loses. Like everybody, it's just money.
If Tyson embarrasses himself and somehow tarnishes his legacy, he triples his net worth by tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the interview he gave to that 11-year-old girl? Oh no, this is you mentioned legacy. So there's like this junior reporter asking him like, "Hey, what do you?" Little girl goes, How do you feel this fight? What is it going to do for your legacy?" And at this point, you could tell Tyson's just being Tyson. Totally doesn't realize he's talking to a child, and he's just like, "Legacy." I can't do the Tyson lips if I really focus, but I don't have legacy is just a word people grab onto. He's like, I have no legacy. I'm going to die. You're going to die. We're all going to be dust. And he's just going off about how nothing matters and stuff like that. And this little girl's like, that's interesting. I haven't heard anyone ever put it that way. Huh. And I was just like, this is the best part to come out of all of this. I'll try to send in the Discord, but it was just.
He just starts singing.
Doesn't he get 20 million if he just gets wrecked?
What's that?
Doesn't he get like 20 million if he gets wrecked?
Oh, he's getting money. Yeah.
That's like, and then there's another 20 million in prize. It's some preposterous number.
It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be an event. It's
who's rooting.
We're talking about it now. We're gonna be talking about it tomorrow.
Oh yeah, I'm having friends over for it.
Nobody.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Paul's making a whole career off of people wanting to see him get hit in the face.
To be fair, it's a good business.
Step one,
strategy.
you have to be a person that people want to see hit in the face. Step two, you have to then go out and put yourself in a position to get hit in the face. Step three, profit. Like that's his whole business model. So occasionally he has to go out and do something that reminds us why step one is there. Then he has to continue scheduling events for step two, and he just keeps racking in the profit. It's a weird business model.
It's the heel business model, right? You lean into that role. Now,
but as a person, not an act.
Sure,
like, but real name
is it? Oh yeah,
it's not he's the Undertaker.
It's
like
not
it's
the Rock or something.
Name.
Yeah. And I guess even with it being his real name, do you guys wonder if he's actually like that? I mean, it's something we can't answer, but I sometimes wonder if people know that's their business model and they just lean into it. That's their job, right? I don't know.
Seems weird.
Okay.
Doesn't seem healthy for sure.
All right, let's wrap up the show today talking kind of about our game of the year, where we at, but also I'd like to include in this roundtable, like, is there any game this year that you regret purchasing or that you just like didn't live up to your expectations? Like that would be something I think it'd be interesting to kind of marry with game of the year. Let's start with you, Mark. What are you thinking right now? Because there's been, I think this year I saw people saying like this has been a horrible year for gaming, and it's like for some gaming, yeah, but there have been some really standout games that I think have really gotten a lot of traction.
They say regrets will stick on your soul longer, right? And to me, Skull and Bones is the biggest regret I had ever in gaming. I got it early because I was like, I want to be able to play it and talk about it on the show here.
Yeah.
It just wasn't fun to me. So I'm looking at my library right now. I played a lot of games that came out over the last 3 years or so. Like Ghost of Tsushima is the game I had the most fun with this year. And that's what, 2020, 2019. I don't know. Like I'd have to look at my Switch as well. But I thought there've been some decent games, and I thought it's been heating up nice too. Like I think we'll have to wait and see. Final Fantasy Rebirth to me is a clear contender. I haven't played it. Alan Wake 2, I feel like people are gonna love. I haven't played it. And I think those are games that make this a good year overall. Helldivers 2, I would say. If there's games I'm looking at that I had a lot of fun with at launch that came out this year, Helldivers 2 was definitely one that captured my attention for a good bit. But yeah, in terms of regrets, Skull and Bones. Yeah, I regret that more than most of my worst mistakes I've ever made throughout my undergraduate years. And there was atrocious ones. So
Helldivers 2 is definitely my game of the year. I don't know. It's really hard to win a game of the year with a game that comes out in February. So, bold strategy there. I'd like to see Astrobot get some real acclaim. Not because I played it, but just because like the everything around it's so great, and I'd love to see it kind of grow and turn into something. And then I don't really have any regrets with gaming this year. I've not purchased my Brutosaur yet, so maybe I will have one. But I view regrets more as like, well, what did it do for gaming? And I think Concord caused some real damage. Like I think Concord was some real fallout. And we got to laugh about it and we got to have a chuckle, but like the fallout behind that could be real. Like there could absolutely be people that are concerned about it. So I think that is an Anthem level of a miss, where you're now going to live on as a name of like an example of what not to do. So I guess if I had to pick somebody to like win the anti-game of the year, that would be Concord the whole way. I think they just utterly nailed that category. I just don't have any personal regrets about it because I wasn't a genre that I was looking for, and it wasn't a game I ended up picking up.
We got Azure saying that their only regret is going back to school, no time for games, and that's like I think everybody here feels that restriction on our free time to actually play games this year, and I think that's one of the things that shared across this year is a lot of people, for whatever reasons, are just finding that they are busier than they've ever been, and maybe they're working 2 jobs, maybe I don't know, like, but there's just you're going back to school and things like that. I think for me, what's interesting as I look at and start winding down this year, I've been more into early access games. And so like things like Enshrouded, which they continue to pump out content for that. They've, Pal World, I thought was like such a really big start to the year. And then you have like my favorite, my game of the year right now would easily be No Rest for the Wicked. And it's not complete. And that means that it might be my game of the year for next year as well, because they're working on big updates. And then we start talking about like, well, they announced Light No Fire. That sounds interesting. Mm-hmm. I'm betting we're going to learn more about Light No Fire at this year's Game Awards because, they like, why not? Let's talk about it. And maybe that's going to be another game that enters into that early access phase to kind of get ahead of the launch issues that we saw with No Man's Sky. So that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most. No Rest for the Wicked easily takes my game of the year right now. And there are some really strong contenders. I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. I have not yet played Rebirth. Metaphor is no slouch, and it's an easy recommend if anybody's interested. The Pixel remasters for sure are out there and are something that I absolutely adore and am enjoying. And then my biggest regret this year, the Suicide Squad. That was just awful. Like to the point where you just playing it and I'm like, all right, like I don't want to. Like, oh, I haven't seen this, or you got to make it to this point. And it's like, you can't pay me. Like, I'm good. Like, I can't get my money back. I'm not interested in this game. And it turns out I think a lot of people aren't either. So like Concord took, if it wasn't for like Concord, I think that would be one of the biggest misses this year, and it would be more forefront in people's mind. But Concord said, "Hold my beer." They're like, they're like, "Hold up, we got this."
Yeah, nominees are announced in 3 days. I think Black Myth Wukong gets a nominee in some categories.
I hope so. It's great.
I think there are some really strong games this year. I think Call of Duty 6, Black Ops 6 could get nominees. I think it's really impressed people. It's really done well, even for Call of Duty games.
Agreed. People that I know historically have been very critical of Activision as an entire enterprise, and especially Call of Duty's yearly release, are saying nothing but praises for Black Ops 6. So
I think if Veilguard gets a nomination, people are going to be upset.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because if it does, it's not just because people like that game is deeply divisive. But are you telling me Hogwarts didn't get any kind of nominee, and you're gonna if Veilguard gets put up, how could it not be rigged? How is that not evidence of, hey, why don't you just spend a little bit of money and we'll put you on the show?
Yeah, it's at least a sign that they have to make these decisions far enough out that they're going off of press reviews before the game even came out. And they should be frantically scrambling to get that pulled from the press release.
They haven't made the announcement yet. I believe
they haven't made the announcement yet, but I think
they've announced the day.
Yeah, the date's 3 days from now.
Yeah.
I mean, how much merit do you guys put into the Game Awards? Like do you get excited to watch them? Do you get curious about, who's going to get nominated? Because I feel like I'm at a point where I just don't care.
I think I watch for the know what other gamers are enjoying. I don't have time to enjoy the games I already want to enjoy, so I really don't have time to go out there and explore all that gaming is. And so it helps me understand what other people are enjoying and what other genres are doing well, and where people are spending their time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't change my purchasing at all. So it's not
Sure.
really like a super big driver for me.
Sure. Sure.
But I like that they exist. I like
Yeah.
I like that they're out there. They just don't, like, I don't necessarily look for Oscars or Academy Awards to determine what I watch, but like I like that they exist, I think.
I agree with that.
It does help me on the Oscars though. Like with something that wins an Oscar, especially for movie of the year. Like I like movies, so it's always something like, oh, I wasn't gonna watch that. I'll go check it out and see what I think.
I think, and to that point, I think the Oscars have more weight in their recommendations in my mind than the Game Awards. Brian, you made the point I watch for the news. That's what I care most about.
Mhm.
And that's why I feel like the Game Awards to me are kind of just a tent pole for promoting the industry beyond just giving out truly objective rewards like announcements and all that stuff. Like, Chris, to your point, I get more insight from websites like Giant Bomb and all their recommendations, because they have like what we recommended as a team and then our individual write-ins. Like, I find those to like impact me the way Brian's describing the Oscars, where the Game Awards,
The Oscars have an advantage. They're describing their views on a medium that is a pretty consistent length, a pretty
Sure.
consistent consumption type. It's always on a screen. It's always without interaction. It's always between an hour and a half and 2.5 hours. Like so for as different as a horror movie aimed at adults and a kids movie are, they're consumed the same way. And gaming is just much, much, much broader than that. So it would be like having an award for like best restaurant of the year. And it's like, okay, well, how is fast food considered? Like, is it based on sales numbers? In which case fast food does really well. Is it fine dining? Okay. Do we have anything that, does that mean that anything is $300 a plate is what's going to win? And so like, it would be really hard to say like restaurant of the year. So I think that's the Game of the Year's they have a hard task that they've set up for themselves. So it does become a bit of a tentpole. I agree with that. It becomes a bit of a promotion fest and feels self-aggrandizing. What I like is the coverage around it. What I like is that like Skill Up will put out a video and MMO Bomb will put out, and like there'll be these different videos that will take on some of these games and try to zoom in a little bit further. And every once in a while I see a game in there that I'm like, oh, it got nominated. That's in a genre I like. I must not have heard about that. Maybe that's a game I should consider. If it coincided with like a Steam sale, that would be like a really easy thing for me to go, oh, awesome. I missed that one, but I'm not going to go play all of them because not all of them are up my alley.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I guess I hope it continues to evolve in a way where people, you mentioned like something like Harry Potter not getting nominated versus like what if Dragon Age getting nominated. I feel like that gets to this degree of like people sensing there's some type of industry bias within the nomination process and all that stuff. So I would say because you mentioned films have had the luxury of also being around for over almost 100 years now too, right? Gaming is still really new, and how we do these types of compared to films, I would say
He's coming up on 40, right?
But yeah, I mean, I guess
entertainment system was late 80s.
Sure. I guess when did the Oscars start too? I wonder, because I just feel like something like this being more of a mature event as the decades go on, I'll be curious to what it looks like then.
Started in 1929.
Yeah, I was thinking it was back in the 20s.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Wonder if they could have seen Ricky Gervais coming to awards like
Oh man,
legendary. All right, Mark, where can people find you, man?
On Twitter at Mark Liberto, on YouTube at Late to the Game, and on Twitch at Late to the Game, and here hopefully next Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, so I think honestly I like this time slot. It actually worked out.
You guys moving to Blue Sky?
No, I have no desire.
Are you gonna try that out?
I already have a Blue Sky, like, because I got invited to it a long time ago, but I don't have, like, same thing with Reds. Do I have one? Yeah. Do I use it? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I don't have time on, like, I literally don't have time. Everything's happening on X. That's where it's gonna be. Like that, that's where I'm gonna spend my time. And if there's anything interesting that happens on Blue Sky, somebody will screenshot it and post it on X. It's like, and then that will be the play there.
Do you think anything could ever take out X?
It's kind of like, can anything take out World of Warcraft? I think it has to be from within, because they already announced that Disney, WB, all the boycotters that were boycotting the platform from advertising are turning on their advertising. You know, so this coming back, and I'm like, all right, like at some point, like we've seen these moves for people to go to an alternate happen so much that it's just a meme. Like, all right, see you in a couple weeks. When you're like, my fear though is that it just, because like no matter what, it's going to lean one way or the other. It leaned left so long, now it's definitely leaning right. But if everybody who's left leaves the platform, I don't think the platform benefits. If everybody, you know, like having them exit the conversation, I think that's not what I want to see. And so I hope that people who are making their exit eventually come back, because that's where everything's happening.
I think ironically, the idea that social media can become an echo chamber only magnifies if like there's only truth socials out there or something like that, where like same thing that with Truth Social, I would see what people would post there because someone reposted it on Twitter. I have no desire to go to Truth Social. I have no desire to go to Blue Sky.
It has more investors than it does users. So that one's a weird one.
Well, yeah, but same thing like with Threads. I have a Threads, and I'm only reminded about it when I'm on Instagram looking at one of the 1,500 memes my friends have sent me that day, and I accidentally open Threads. And I'm like, oh, darn it. And it's always the same thing. Hey, I'm new here. Where can I find people interested in this? And I'm just like, this is the thing. So
it bums me out that it's hard to watch TikTok without downloading TikTok. It used to be easier because my friends will send me TikToks and I don't want TikTok on my phone. And I used to would open it in a browser and it would let me play it. And now all it does is open it in a browser, show me the thumbnail, and let me download it. It's like,
doesn't Instagram do the same thing? Because I try to send my dad Instagram reels all the time and he can't remember his login. So he's like, I can't look at it.
That's a problem with Facebook though too. Like anything, well, because it's like you share a Facebook link and it doesn't say the name of the link. It says log into Facebook, and you're like,
yeah,
all right, Facebook. I'm not. I use you for family communication and buying stuff.
I have a bone to pick with Facebook. I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but like I watch my reels predominantly on Facebook or Instagram, right? And if you're getting into that scrolling hole at like 2 a.m., you get ads on Facebook. This is something that has shocked me, and I've reported it every time it's come up. But there is a new flagship of AI products on Facebook marketing themselves as use this AI product to remove clothing from any image you want. And then they show it. I'm like, how is this legal? And so I report it, and Facebook has said, we've decided to keep the ad. I'm like, it's just like, how is this okay? What's going on here? This seems like an app that should be illegal because it could be abused, right? But I'm just like, man, and it's only been on Facebook. Like Twitter has its own problems with certain type of content. Never expected to see it on Facebook, and now it's just almost every day I get something, and I'm just like, yeah. So,
Chris, where can people find you?
Here, just right here. Every week I hope to game more. Some weeks I report back, and I have I don't know what, another 4 or 5 weeks to decide if I'm going to buy this stupid Brutosaur.
Buy it, dude. Just buy it.
I'm not proud of it that I want to buy it, but I do want that dinosaur. So, well, I'll keep you guys up to date.
If you're leaving paycheck to paycheck, I'd have a different answer.
I'm not.
But you actually got like $250 bonus money from switching your cell phone plan. Like,
yeah,
that positive.
Yeah, losing money not to buy the dinosaur.
It's like, get it, buy the dinosaur. For me, guys, you can find me here. I just launched Ginger Prime TV. That's where future, like all live streams are actually going to be. That coincides with the branding over on Twitch for Ginger Prime TV. So links should be in the description if you guys find it. You know, like you want to come hang out. We've been doing some reaction content over there. Been playing some games as well. I think it ends up being much smoother and an experience. So I hope you guys check it out. Outside of that, we'll be back here next week for Eastern, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 Central time. For another roundtable, going over the news and so much more. But thank you guys so much for hanging out. Appreciate all the conversation going on in chat today. And we'll see you guys next week.